right, we are the Four Storytellers, writers scratching deeper into the fabric of our lives to generate diverse stories and unique characters using our wildly individual and distinct voices. I am Sydney Gilder, the amateur of the group, and joining me tonight is our wonderful dramatist, Del Shores, our journalist, Nancy J., and our philosopher, James Grady, who is drinking something interesting tonight. What is that?
It is a little, what is that, pink something or other from, I don't know, one of the vodka things.
Not gonna lie, whenever it was
looked like a shot.
Well, to me, it looked like a condom because it was hidden behind your name and it had this little wiggly thing going with it.
So it is a shot, and it's in a skull cup.
Oh, I like that. The little imprinted thing.
Yeah.
You know, I miss bars. Anybody want a shot?
One day we will get back out into the world. So tonight we are talking about bedtime stories, or more importantly, stories of our childhood. Nancy J has her Dr. Seuss Cat in the Hat. Oh, I know, I love that. I don't know if you guys had this when you graduated, either high school or 8th grade, but I always got the book, Oh, the Places You'll Go. I have like 3 copies of them. Just from graduation gifts from teachers. Well, tonight we are talking about stories that built us as young readers growing into young writers. You know, was there a book that you read on your own for the first time that encouraged you to become either a bigger reader or a writer? Or was there a story your mom read to you that still sticks with you today, or your dad or one of your parents, guardians, read to you? Something that taught you how to read. It can even be a campfire story. Whatever lit that first little candle of storytelling is what we're diving into tonight. So I wanted to jump in and introduce mine. Something that a lot of girls of my generation were in love with was the Junie B. Jones series. It was a series that spanned like 100 books probably. And it's pretty much just about this extremely sassy girl who would complain and do all these really silly things. But what made me fall in love with the book so much was, one, it was, I think this is a second grade, 3rd grade reading level. And I was reading these books whenever I was in 1st grade. So this was like my ego boost, knowing that I was reading at a much higher level. But I loved reading about another diva girl who dressed funny and who was out of the box. And it was wonderful. And she's a great role model for girls. And so I would read this with a flashlight under the covers, way past my bedtime, or I would like eat these up like candy at the Scholastic Book Fair. I don't know if you guys had that growing up. A Scholastic book company would come to your school and you get the catalog and you'd highlight and you'd spend all your money on one book and then a bunch of erasers you'd never use again. That's what we would use it on. But yeah, so how about you guys? Do you guys have anything to talk about tonight with your bedtime stories, or besides Cat in the Hat? Is Cat in the Hat your story?
No, these are my story.
Aww.
There's one real thick one.
Well, let me just say, I mean, yes, I liked, as a kid, I really liked pictures. My favorite, I remember just combing through Playtime poodles for some reason. Today, as a grown up, I hate the idea of animals being dressed up as people. But as a child, I loved it. Yes, The Cat in the Hat is probably what I really learned to read with. I was probably like about 3. I remember I had an older sister and we were this huge family of readers, and I was reading so well that in 1st grade, the teacher called my mother and said, Nancy said she's reading novels now, that she's reading Little Women. I don't believe her, so we think she may have a problem with lying, but I was. So I've always been ahead. Then the thing that I would share with my mother was A.A. Milne, which is, of course, Winnie the Pooh. This is when we were very young, one of the first ones. This was actually my sister got this on her 5th birthday in 1951, but I absconded with it, colored in it, drew in it, and I remember, I still remember James, Morrison, Weatherby, George Dupuy took great care of his mother, though he was only 3, and I would memorize all this, and at night with my mother, we would say these things out loud, so I love this book. Then, when I was about 5 or 6, I will always remember this book. It's called Island of the Blue Dolphins. I'm sick that I can't find the cover. But this is about a young Aleutian girl who was on a boat, and the boat sinks, but she's able to make it to shore and has to survive by herself. Have you heard of this, Sydney?
Yeah, I wish I could.
It's So good. I would recommend this to anyone.
Here we go. I'm back. I was freezing. Go
Oh,
on.
okay.
I'm sorry.
It is.
Yes.
It will freeze your heart. Some of the stories that she has to go, some of the things she has to go through as a child. Island of the Blue Dolphins by Scott Odell. Wonderful,
Oh, yeah.
wonderful. But then by the time that I was like 7, I'm reading Little Women. Actually absconded Lady Chatterley's lover from my sister, and found that was
What?
yeah, as a kid. But the best is this. This is Forever Amber by Catherine Winsor. Sydney, this is probably the first sex book that became a hit. 1944. This is the book my mother took on her honeymoon, and she said she had to cover up the cover so that no one would know she was reading it. It was one of those banned in Bostons and so on. And it's all, and as a result of this all has to do with the British Empire and one of the Charleses, Charles the First or Charles the Second, and having an affair with Amber. And I mean, it's absolutely wonderful. So from there, I mean, I've just always had novels. So, but I don't remember being read to as much as a child, as much as reading to myself.
Yeah, that's me.
But
Nancy, I wanted to ask you, the pink book, the one that you read, the A.A. Mill. This is a weird question, but what does it smell like? If you open it and you smell the pages. No, open it and smell the pages. Does it smell like an old book?
well, it's a familiar smell. I don't know what would
No,
be
but like old book smell, like when it has like the kind of the pages have gotten a little dark and it has that really, I don't want to use the word musty because it's like my favorite smell in the whole world, but
let's just say it smells good to me.
I wanted to show you guys something. So I don't remember if it was in a episode or if it was never we were discussing episodes, but you guys brought up Dick and Jane.
Yeah,
So I was
an episode. We talked about it.
I have been looking all through the house, and I found a Dick and Jane. And it's from
That's
1951.
That is a diverse Dick and Jane.
Yes, I mean, look at it.
Like that.
Look at that.
Wow.
Yep, and it has the little 3 words on each page. Let me find something. I'm about to read you guys a bedtime story. Yep. But yeah, my this belonged to my aunt whenever she was younger, and I'm gonna smell it so I can. I love that smell. But yeah, so this is also, I read these when I was little because they were at my great grandmother's house whenever we'd hang out there, or my grandma's house, and so that's what we had. We didn't have like Jeannie B. Jones there or something. But yeah, I wanted to show you guys because we were talking about that, and I found it. And I was like, oh, Dick and Jane. Yeah. What about you, Del? Do you have?
Well, I was, as Nancy was going through her evolution of books, I was thinking about, I don't think that I was read to as much as I read to my children. I mean, I was a real big reader to my kids when they were growing up and, when they were little girls. But I do remember my mom reading Peter Rabbit. I remember that one. And I remember that there was a lot, because my dad was a Southern Baptist preacher. It was like Joseph and the Coat of Many Colors and, those Bible stories. We would always read Bible stories. But as I grew up and, grew up in, 4th grade, 3rd to 4th grade, I became an avid reader. And what I would do is I loved mysteries, and the Bobbsey twins were the first ones that I devoured. And in class, I remember that I would get in trouble all the time because I would read a book a day. I would read one Bobbsey twin book a day. And I would start, because, school was a little bit boring to me. So I would put the book between my legs and I would read all day long. Mm-hmm. And then I would return it in the afternoon and get another one. So then I graduated to the Hardy Boys, and then I got my mother to check out the Nancy Drew books, so I didn't have to check them out because it was embarrassing to me. But as I went to, as I grew up and went to high school, my mother was the high school drama teacher, and it became plays. And I just started devouring plays. And she would say, you have to read this one. You have to read this one. So she introduced me to Tennessee Williams. And she introduced me to all the classics, because she was a drama major. And I think that is what molded me and gave me a love for not only literature, but also the stage.
Yeah. Yeah, now you're a screenwriter. Now you're a playwright. Now you...
But I didn't seek that out. All that came as an extension from the plays. Mm-hmm. Every television and film all came from me writing plays. So my advice to anybody who is wanting to, whatever you want to do, read that genre. Just read it, devour it.
Yes. Now, how about you, Mr. James?
I have been thinking about it a lot, because I know this is going to shock everybody, I had a very disrupted childhood.
What?
Around the time I was 5 or 6, my mother was permanently disabled, and I was sent to live with my great-grandmother on my father's side. And so I was raised by my great-grandmother from off and on most of my life, and so she was a big reader. She dropped out of school in the 11th grade. And she just never lost this love of reading and learning. And so she had a book like a wall like Nancy's behind her that had everything from, I actually have her copy of Wuthering Heights here, but also things like the Thornbirds and all these Collins romances and things like that. And so she also had this, like, one shelf was dedicated to the golden books. All these little golden books.
Oh, yeah.
And so I can remember, before I started school, I started kindergarten being able to do two things. I could read, because she didn't read to us so much as she had us read to her. So that was the way that we, like 3, 4 years old, she would read words that we couldn't recognize, but we had to read them to her. And I could write cursive because she thought that was important. So I could write cursive and read when I went to kindergarten. So I had an experience like Dell, sort of, that I got in trouble a lot in school because I read and ignored people. And I think where it really took off, because of my mom's condition, I moved back to my mom, and she was in Atlanta. And so I went to school in Atlanta for a year, and then she met a man, and that man moved us to Armurchie Valley, Georgia, which was a little schoolhouse where 4th and 5th grades had one teacher, and she had to teach both grades in one classroom. And you know what they did to me? They said, "We don't know what to do with him." So they sent me to the library. I spent every day from 11 to 3 unsupervised in the library of the school because they had no clue. And our elementary school library was the city library for the little town of Armurchie Valley, and so they had everything. And so I was able to read whatever I wanted all the time. And the teacher would give me recommendations about books above my grade level because she had retired as a high school teacher and then come to Georgia to teach as an elementary school teacher. And so I read everything. I just that was the best schooling of my life, and that's where I learned to love to read and do it on my own. And I read, what I learned? I learned not to care what people thought that you should be reading.
Oh, I wish I had had that.
In the 4th grade, I think I mentioned this before. In the 4th grade, they're like, do a book report, and so I went and I found the autobiography of Otto von Bismarck on the shelf, and I wrote my 4th grade book report on the autobiography of the Chancellor of Germany, to this day, I still remember that book.
Wasn't that a Bette Midler? Like, didn't she talk about that in one of her shows, Bette Midler?
Did she?
Yes, I think so.
She must have gone to the same school I did.
Oh my God, James, I love that so much that I feel like that there's like a little movie there of this kid that had to use the library as his babysitter, and he started think about the imagination that this kid had and where the worlds he went to. I love that.
Well, and what's funny is 2 things happened while I was in there. One is we started a school newspaper because again we had a computer, and I was the one of the few people that knew how to use it. And so we started the school newspaper, and we also started a school bank. So, like, school kids, like, yeah, the kids would deposit money, and the bank would. So I was the chairman of the school bank. So yeah, it kind of is a little book there that would be very much inspired by.
Have you thought about writing about your great grandmother who raised you? I mean, she's not in any of your novels right now.
No, but she did inspire the character in the short story that's being published in this little story. That is her and me.
Oh, good.
You know, she wasn't a witch like the woman in my story, but that relationship is very much inspired by ours. And you know, I think I told you guys this story about the way that she left the church over homosexuality, because there was this moment where the minister came to her house and in front of me was sort of talking about his next week's sermon about gay people, and she kicked him out, and she never went back to church. You know, she attended baptisms and funerals, and that was it for the next 7 years.
I love her.
So definitely, like, my hero, still the person who every year in October I get depressed just because, you know, that was when
he
it happened.
died in October.
Yeah.
What day?
17th.
Oh.
That's my daughter Caroline's birthday.
And, wow.
I ask you that because October 17th and 18th are huge in my life. I came out on the 18th. My first play opened on the 18th, and my parents' anniversary was on the 18th, and my daughter's birthday is on the 17th. So I think that's why I love you so much, James.
James, I don't relate to it on that level, but growing up, my grandmother, who had divorced my grandfather, this is my mom's mom and dad, she lived alone for a long time, and you know, me being my mom's most responsible kid, she had a hard time living alone, so my mom would send me to take care of her and stay with her almost every weekend. And she, you know, would watch Golden Girls, or she'd watch baseball and play Yahtzee on a little machine. And she was very, very paranoid. I mean, she had severe mental health issues. And so I would take care of her. And at the time, I didn't really know what was going on. My mom just gave me instructions on what to do. But when she was sleeping and when I didn't have to take care of her, that's whenever I would read the books, you know, that I would not have been allowed to read at my parents'. That's where I really got into romance books, especially on I had an iPod at the time. I did not have a phone. But yeah, so like that environment, because also she couldn't see. And so sometimes I would read to her, or I'd do puzzles with her, and I'd explain to her what each piece looked like so she can put the piece. It was a very long time to do puzzles. But books, like, you know, whenever she was distracted or being with her, that's where I was the only place I was really allowed to read the erotic novels that I was reading at a very young age.
Right.
But yeah.
You know, it's funny, though, I didn't mention specific stories because while I got my love of reading from my grandmother, my specific like love of genre actually did come from my mother, because I can remember the time before my mom went away and the time after we were back with her for a little while. My mom was a huge horror fan, and literally the worst example of parenting ever, our childhood vacations, because poor white trash, you know. So my mom would save up money, and we would rent a VHS machine from the video store when you could rent the machines. Mm-hmm. She would rent a VHS machine and a couple of horror movies, and we would go to a hotel and hook it up to a TV at the hotel, so we'd have the pool and the horror movies. So setting the scene of a 6 or 7 year old playing in the pool all day, and then at night having your mother take you to this hotel room and watch Zombie Lake, Night of the Creeps, and then, you know, something worse. I mean, the nightmares were just fantastic.
Oh my God.
And so, but I loved horror. I've always loved horror, and growing up, that was that became my thing. But the reason why Sydney brought me back to that is because my mom was also a big romance reader, and she kept this pile of romance novels in the bathroom next to the toilet. And my mom would disappear into the bathroom for an hour reading a romance novel. And so I remember when I was in middle school, I would flip through the romance novels looking for the sex scene so I could read about the man. Right, so I could because they always describe the dude, and the like pecs and the dick and the whatever, So like that would be my whole thing. I'd be like, let me just flip right to the sex part, read that.
Well, Sydney, I want to ask you. When I was a kid, I remember walking home from school. I was this was in Brownwood, Texas, so it was before fourth grade, and I found this novel on the street, and on the cover of this novel was this man with a whip, and the whip pointed to a woman's vagina.
What?
Yes. And so I took this novel home to my mother. And I said, Mother, I was already reading. I said, I found a book. Can I read it? Mother was like, no.
Oh my God.
I don't know why I just thought of that. But do you think that was a romance novel?
Those were the romance novels that our mothers grew up with.
Is that right?
No, absolutely. They all had those. Like what is that guy's name with the long hair? And now he did
Fabio.
Fabio. I mean, before Fabio, it was always the man with the ripped shirt and the big puffs, and his hair was long, flowing, and the woman's they're bodice rippers. Her bodice was straining against her outfit as he looked at her and possibly had the whip. And and only you would have noticed that it was actually pointed to her vagina. I don't think most people would have really.
No, it was pointed to her vagina.
I know, but I mean, it was just a whip. So, but I mean, they always ended up.
Well, why did he have a whip? Was he going to hurt her?
There was a little tug and pull and back and forth in those books. But that's what the romance novels were in those days.
My grandma still reads romance novels like that. My grandmother, my dad's mom, she has a whole bookshelf full of the little itty bitty short stacked ones. Hers are more cowboy. So think of Fabio with the cowboy hat on.
Are they dirty? Like, was that a dirty book that my mother threw in the trash and told me, this is trash?
The authors never used their real names.
Yeah.
Right.
For a long time.
But yes, I wouldn't say it's romance, Del. Maybe it's just an erotic novel.
We didn't use that word back in those days, Del.
Yeah, it was a harlequin.
Maybe an erotic, maybe in a Playboy.
Yeah.
Not.
Has a different connotation now. Right. I mean, my mom, I made sure to always hide my books, but I would try to be sneaky, and I got my grandmother, she knew I loved romance novels. She bought me Water for Elephants. Remember that movie that came out?
Yeah.
Well, my mom found out I was reading it and she took it away from me. And I was like, this barely has any sex in it. I didn't say it out loud because then she would know. But like, my mom was so particular about what I was reading.
It was so weird in my household because, here my dad was a Southern Baptist preacher, but my mother had this huge, I swear, Nancy, when I see what's behind you, that reminds me of my mother's. We had this sort of hallway that my mother had made into all these bookshelves. And she told us as children, she said, I will pay you $1 for every one of those books that you read.
Wow.
And they were, at one point she just said, you're breaking me. Because I devour it. It was just plays, lots of plays. And that was our home, though. It was like my mother created this sort of sanctuary of reading for us. And
bottom line, though, at the end of the day, y'all, did we have sweet dreams as children after reading?
Yeah.
We
Okay.
got away from. We kind of got away from the bedtime stories. We started talking about other things. But this is why we're dressed like this. By the way, I
Yes.
just want everybody to know. Sydney
PJs.
told me to wear like sleepwear, which I'm naked when I sleep. So
It's time to go to bed, y'all. Come on.
Okay, but before we do,
Not her cold cream.
before we do the bedtime story, did everybody pick one and we got off onto our full lists and backstories? Do you have a bedtime story, Dell, that was your favorite bedtime story?
I have to say, it makes it. Why did I just? I suddenly felt like this wave of emotion because my mother always read to us the night before Christmas on Christmas Eve, and it was just such a special thing for us that we knew that we were getting gifts, and we knew that Christmas was coming, and
Yeah.
she would always go, it was the night before Christmas, and all through the house, not a creature was stirring, not even a mouse.
Yeah.
And I must have heard it, 10 times as I was growing up.
What about you, James? Did you have something your parents or your grandmother read? No, your grandmother couldn't read, but
Yeah, I mean, she didn't read to us so much. But the thing that I remember most isn't a book story, but when my grandmother on that side of the family still, her family had a family reunion every couple of years, and I got to stay up with the older people, and my grandmother had a brother who loved to tell the story of bloody bones around the fire at night once the little kids had gone to bed. And I was too little to hear the story of bloody bones coming out from the cupboard and taking away the bad children and eating them in the basement. But again, being a horror lover, I loved hearing that story and being terrified by it. And I look forward to those family reunions where I could hear my Uncle Buddy tell this story. And I cannot for the life of me remember a word of it, which is sad.
oh. What about you, Nancy? Did your mom, dad?
No. I just had a book in my hand every night before I went to bed. And the biggest punishment I ever had was one time when they said, you have to go to bed. And they took all the books that were behind me on the bookshelf on my headboard, took them away.
Oh,
And they said, that is your punishment. Go to sleep without a book.
Oh.
But I never did whatever it was again.
Yeah, that's a no.
but I love that you brought The Cat in the Hat because it was that whole series was so amazing. Read a little bit of it as we go out. Okay?
Oh yeah.
But less than 40 words so that we don't get sued.
Okay.
Oh, is that? Oh,
I don't know how many it is.
Sydney, what about yours?
Oh, so mine, I mean, we always joke with my mom that she read this to us so that we would never leave her. I forgot the name of it. I think it's like Goodnight Owl. And it's about these 3 owls on a
I know Goodnight Owl.
You do the 3 owls that cry, I want my mommy.
Yeah.
And she would read this to us, and we would beg for it because she would make little voices that would sound like. And when she read to us, my baby sister wasn't born yet, so it was just the 3 of us. And she would make all the voices for us, make it sound like us. And I still hear, I want my mommy. And so I remember like when I was little and crying and saying that. Even if I was pissed at my mom, that's why I was crying. I would cry, I want my mommy. So yeah, we always joke that she made us codependent on her.
Okay, so this will be the perfect ending. Spoiler alert, this is the end of the book. Okay.
Oh God.
Then our mother came in and she said to us two, did you have any fun? Tell me, what did you do? And Sally and I did not know what to say. Should we tell her the things that went on there that day? Should we tell her about it? Now, what should we do? Well, what would you do if your mother asked you?
I want my mommy.
Oh, I know. I love it so much.
Oh.
And to all, good night.
Yes.
Yes.
Good night, y'all.
Good night. Eat your vegetables. Take your vitamins. Have a glass of wine.